What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Tack Box podcast. I have my co host Dale Martinson with me today. I am Tyson, and I am coming to you live from North Carolina for the Japanese Chin Specialty. Today is April 8th of 2025. And in this episode, we're going to talk about listener questions. So we have some questions that people have given us on our Facebook page or via email, however we received them, and we want to make sure that we have time to get them answered for you guys. So we're going to do that today here. How are you doing today, Dale?
Man, I'm so jealous. You're already in North Carolina and already got the party started. I mean, man, we don't leave out until Thursday, so by then, no telling what trouble you guys will be into by that point.
Yeah, by that point, we should probably, hopefully, not be arrested. Hopefully, not be, in too much trouble. But
I'll be
we
like,
got,
not my
like,
co-host. I'm here to post bail.
yeah, exactly. That our next episode coming to you from the Greensboro County Jail, because you never know what we're gonna get into. But um, so yeah, we're out here. We got the Japanese Chin specialty that we're doing this week. So I'm excited to meet up with you in person later this week and look at a bunch of awesome dogs and have a good old time before we start, I guess, officially kind of kick off the beginning of summer.
Well, and it's also national specialties are hugely important to every breed. And if you are interested in a breed of dogs, you should really absolutely go to the national specialty. You go and when you're in a breed of dog, if there's any way possible, you should try to attend your national specialty because there's so much of what's going on with your breed. The national specialty is the heartbeat of your breed. And what a wonderful opportunity to see what everybody else has. And I mean, it will move you ahead in your program with your dogs.
Yeah, and this will be my first one. I'm super excited about it. I think it's going to be awesome. I've been looking forward to this week for months now, and it's finally here. So my wife is at home holding down the business and trying to keep that going, and the kennel, and the one kid that stayed behind plus her job. Oh, I bless her heart right now, because I wouldn't want to be doing what she's doing. You know how that goes when when your spouse is the better of the two and has to handle it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. She can do a support group meeting with Jane later because they
yeah,
they can compare stories.
yeah, they might need that. So, all right, let's jump in. So we have a question from our Facebook page, and Marie wants you to talk about aging breeders and how to handle being past showing or passing away before your dogs. So aging breeders, how to handle just not being able to really show anymore, and then maybe like arrangements. Like, what happens if you have five, six show dogs and you end up passing away? What kind of arrangements do you suggest for that?
Wow, that's a super good question. Thank you, Marie. I mean that's something that we're all in this together, and how what we do like as we get older, as we all the lucky ones do, we have to face these times where staying involved and staying active is crucial, and especially these some of these breeders that have been doing it a long time have some wonderful insights and some really great things there. But we're all kind of a little bit responsible for one another on because when one of the people who's involved as an AKC breeder or show person, if they get in trouble, it looks bad for all of us. That because all of a sudden we're just the breeders, and so we kind of need to keep a little bit of a an eye on as people are progressing. Is like how many dogs can they handle? Because sometimes that's an uncomfortable conversation. Like maybe like I'm just saying for myself. One of my little dogs, I was looking at him, and he's turning 15 years old, and I said, gosh, by the time I keep another dog that's 15 years, I'm going to be 75, and another one beyond that, and I'm going to be like in an urn on the shelf. So, I mean, it's like, you kind of start to think about things in terms of like how long how long are you planning to keep these dogs? Are you going to do you have provisions for people to take them? And that's where you need to start like talking to people like have a plan. Stay active, but have a plan.
So what kind of plan would you suggest? Just like where the dogs, if you have kids, maybe that they're gonna take the dogs, something like that. So kind of like I guess part of the will, maybe.
Well, absolutely. Provisions need to be made. Or for starters, you need to also kind of take a look and say, how many do I need to stay active? What was my degree of activity? And maybe I find a new person that says, you know, maybe I can send my dog. Maybe I can send Tyson a dog, and it's something that is something I would like to see shown and bred, and kind of you'll keep the dog or that kind of where you can kind of keep your numbers at a really controlled number where you exactly know how many you have and that you know that your circumstances can support this. And then in the event of becoming incapacitated or worse yet, passing away, you have like a very controlled number of like I have people lined up for these dogs. I've talked to these co-breeders, these friends. I have it all lined up. So if anything happens to me, it's like one day and half a dozen phone calls and this is all taken care of because I've already thought around the corner like I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to call my family and say, "Oh, by the way, could you go and pick up 45 dogs and take them home because, I'm in the hospital." You have to think ahead a little bit like that and be responsible because you're talking about a decade or more commitment. And as we get older, a 30-year note sounds like, yeah, like I'll be seeing that done, that, I mean, that kind of stuff is really, we have to think in 10-year increments as to what we're going to keep, what we're going to be able to, and where it's going to go when we can't, and make provisions for it.
I think there's an aspect of that too. I guess this would just be my business mind. There's an aspect of it that whether you want to look at your kennel as a business or not a business, some people do, some people don't. I guess it depends on the size of it and if you're making money or losing money. But really, 30 years old, if you're it doesn't have a lot to do with age if you're running a kennel. You got to think of it as a business. You could get in a car wreck and pass away. Something tragic could happen. You could pass away. What's going to happen to those dogs at that point? So I think going in, I'm going to breed dogs and this is what I want to do. There should be provisions in place no matter your age of what happens because as
Valid,
breeders
totally valid
wanting
point.
yeah, and wanting to protect the breed and make the breed better, we don't want our dogs going into shelter or anything like that. We want provisions lined up for them if something were to happen to us. So I think just getting started in it, you should always have provisions lined up for the dogs if
So,
something were to happen.
so with the American Kennel Club, there are requirements that your dogs would be microchipped. So because while you and I can certainly tell all of our dogs apart, you know, if some of our friends or family came in, they go, "Well, they all kind of look alike. All you people look alike to me. I don't know which one of you is Timmy and which one of you is Jimmy." I mean, so when we're keeping our dogs, we should have a master list with all of the chip numbers, and we're going to say, and just say, "Well, this dog here, I co-own with Tyson. In the event of anything happens to me, this one goes back to him. This one right here, this is going to go to so and so," and kind of have a plan in place where these dogs can be identified, and these dogs can be, and your wishes can be, where the paperwork is current, and that they can be transferred over to them, and that you kind of know as to where you're going to. And some of your dogs, just like in anything with your business, some of your dogs are going to be an asset, and some of your dogs are going to be a liability, right? So if I go ahead and if somebody comes and takes, I have money set aside for my dogs and for their continued care, and for like the people that are going to take them. They know where they know the paperwork is to be there. They will be out no financial expense to take them. It's all kind of squared away where my wishes are known should I go ahead and drive off the ditch or get run over running. I mean that's that kind of thing we have to plan ahead because the bigger you're into it, the bigger the obligation and the bigger the ask. At one time, everybody, when I was younger, and everyone would say, "Oh, if anything happens to me, I'm going to have them put you down." And one time I started to think, "Oh my God, if all my friends went out in like one bad weekend, I could have like 700 dogs." It's like, you got to find one other person. Can't just be me. But we kind of have to think about what we're going to do, have a plan in place, be able to identify the dogs and kind of have that kind of like what you were saying at any age, I mean, because it's an obligation and it's a responsibility. Those dogs didn't ask to be into your care. You took it on.
And I think a few things that you mentioned would bring up obviously some good podcast episodes, record keeping, and we could talk about record keeping probably for hours because
There's a lot to
that
it. It goes into everything. It goes into your vaccines, your training, your customers, your all of that stuff. I mean, that's a deep, deep pond there. But that's part of the whole point is being able to go in there, have somebody else who's not familiar with your situation go into your home and identify those puppies, identify those dogs, because otherwise your dogs are going to be basically lost as a colony as far as we contribute to the breed because now we don't know who they are. You know, that's the thing.
and you can get microchip readers, and I mean, if you have a kennel and a certain amount of dogs, and you're afraid people aren't gonna be able to tell them apart, but you got them chipped, like you can have a chip reader that is part of your kennel. So if something were to happen, they could walk in and grab the chip reader and read them and look at your records and be like, oh, this is Bruno or this is Timmy.
Yeah, exactly. And one other thing and kind of going with Marie's question, because I kind of get the vibe that maybe uh, because there's been some situations where older people and they really weren't in complete control of their situation, and then the situation kind of was like unknown and kind of like blew up. And there's been some of that on social media. We are all kind of a little bit responsible for one another, and sometimes we have to say things to like, and like, hey, you know, I have friends, and I'll say, you want a dog? Now you're not getting too many, right? You placed out some of the others. If you want take another show dog, then we kind of got to stay on to each other to make sure that because especially we get attached to them, they become part of your family, kind of part of your home, and next thing you know, you become the old lady in the shoe, and it can get out of control. And when things happen gradually, we tend not to see it. You go, oh, well, I mean, I've talked to clients before and said, oh, that fence is over there. That could probably be replaced. And they're like, oh, no, Harold just redid that just last year. Or was it the year before? Or was it 5 years ago? No, that was when Billy left for college. I guess that's been 15 years ago. I'm like, yes, it's falling down. It is no longer. So things happen gradually, slowly, and sometimes conditions in which the dogs are kept are can deteriorate, and you can kind of like not see it. And someone kind of gets used to something, and that's where with the AKC inspections, they're not coming out to like audit your records and do they're coming out as like a friend to say, hey, you might have a few too many dogs here. Maybe you need to change this up here. Maybe you need to keep a little bit better records, or maybe they're kind of to help you in a nice way, but also a firm way of like, we don't want to see you get in trouble. You're representing the American Kennel Club, and we don't want you going out on the local news because that's what they say, AKC breeder, And so when we know our friends are maybe having some issues, and especially people that are kind of off the grid a little bit, those situations can then end up and they blow up on social media because someone was not in control of the situation. It got out of hand, and now all of a sudden we've got 50 dogs and pictures of old crates, and it's like it turns into another rescue thing. It makes us all look not good.
Is there something in place? Does AKC have anything? Say you got an AKC breeder who suddenly passes away or something happens. Does AKC have anything in place to help in that situation that you know of?
Well, no, the AKC has they do have like disaster relief, and there are with the parent clubs. There's breed rescues and that kind of thing. But you have to remember, dogs are still today individual titled property. So they when you have your name on it, it's just like your car, your house, your boat. This is a title piece of property in your name, and you're responsible for it. But it belongs to you. You know, so but it also you belong to it a little bit because it can get you thrown in jail if you don't do it right. I mean, you've got to keep up with this, and you've got to stay on top of it.
So now the other part of the question would be as far as showing. So maybe let's get your opinion on this as an AKC judge because I don't exactly know what this question means, but she said let's talk about aging breeders and how we handle being past showing. So for me, being past showing, coming from an AKC judge, when do you know it's time to, like when are you in the ring as a handler hindering the show ring? You got a cane and you can barely get around. Like maybe talk to that aspect of it from a judge and maybe from a
Well,
breeder.
yeah. So I think as though as far as being past it, that's hugely determinative to the individual and to the breed. So you don't probably have to be super fit and to be able to show a Japanese chin. You might need to be a little bit more packing it if you're taking a Rottweiler in. So I mean, it kind of goes breed to breed, and a lot of the toy breeds do as people get older, they start to gravitate towards smaller dogs, and they can have they're like, okay, well, they're downsizing. And so I think as long as you can safely show your dog, we have a lot of the judges now. The American Kennel Club has worked really hard with the American Disabilities Act. We have provisions for people that need special help and this and that. There's all sorts of stuff in there. As long as you can safely show your dog, enjoy it, and have that kind of thing, that's awesome. I mean, that's great. I think that and, there's always people at the show that would be more than glad to help you show, or would be glad to show a dog for you, or there's junior handlers, there's people wanting to learn all of that I mean, so that can be a whole segue as to continuing your influence with the next generation of handler exhibitors. But I think we have to be aware of what we can do and where we're going with that, and kind of like I can take care of this many dogs, or I can't take care of this many dogs, or maybe I can do a breeding, or I can't do, right now I'm not going to be able to. We just have to be honest with ourselves as to where we're at in our journey, in our personal health and situation, so we don't find ourselves in a spot, with our dogs.
Yeah, and I think so. What I take away from that and what I hear from that is, I think in life, I think it's cyclical, right? You start needing help from your parents to feed and change your diapers, and you
Right.
kind of end that way needing the help from your kids. Hopefully,
Right.
hopefully you have children or somebody that can help you with that. So I tell my teenage daughter all the time: awareness, self awareness, alertness. Be aware of what's around you and of yourself and what you can handle. And I think it's the same way as we age too. And what you're saying I get out of this is we have to be aware and be honest with ourselves. So be aware of, am I healthy? Am I 60 and healthy? I can probably breed another dog and have another litter. Am I 80 and I've been in the doctor a ton and I got six dogs? Should I be breeding another litter? I don't know. Probably not, but maybe have a little bit of self awareness with that, and it's the same thing in the show ring too. You're not going to give a 10-year-old a Rottweiler that they can't control and put them in the show ring if you're if you can barely walk and you have in a cane and you can't handle a Rottweiler, you probably shouldn't get in the ring with a Rottweiler. Your best situation, and I love what you said, and this is what I would probably have answered with it. If you can't safely show a dog for yourself or the dog or anybody around, sponsor a junior. Use one of your dogs and let a junior use one of your dogs, sponsor them, help them out, and bring a new generation into dog showing because I mean we gotta show the next generation how great this sport is and be an advocate for the AKC, for dog shows, for our breed, whatever breed you're in, and help people get acquired into it. Because as anybody who shows dogs knows, it's expensive, and it's an
Well,
expensive hobby. And if we can help bring there's a reason why there's not a ton of kids in it. It's expensive, and when they just get out of high school and they're on their own, they're trying to figure out life. If we can help them with that and have a nice dog for them, why not? That's where I think I'm suited when I can't physically do it or don't want to do it or can't do it safely. Let's help a kid get into it, stick with it.
100%. Or especially when you have other people. I mean, we have had been so lucky to have had the winning dogs that we've had. We've had like 17 best in show winning dogs, and the hundreds and hundreds of champions. We didn't do it all ourselves. I mean, oh my, I mean, we did plenty, but we did not do it all ourselves. And the other day, I had a couple of years ago, I had my last litter of American Cockers. I guess about 2.5 years ago, and I placed them with people that I felt would do with them. And now I was at the show and I saw champions being finished from those dogs. They've carrying on. I gave the one that I had kept and finished. I gave to a friend of mine to go show as a special. He's the number one owner handled dog in the United States, all breeds, and an all breed best in show winner. And I'm like, couldn't be more happy for his success, and that I enabled all that to happen. I mean, it's very rewarding. It's kind of like going, it's like you made something go on. It's not just about yourself. It's about your breed, and it's about your legacy as far as like what did you bring to the other people, because we all have a shelf life, and there's an expiration for everything. And so how well you play with others and how all that comes part. And I think that's part of like when kennel clubs and all that, we have it, but we do need to kind of like watch other folks and kind of say, they may need a little help and maybe a little gentle nudge and like kind of say, don't be hoarding, don't get, I mean, that kind of stuff. There's where we can kind of keep the numbers and keep our situation, be able to keep our involvement longer. And when you can't physically keep dogs or can't, then you can still be involved in the kennel club and the show and that kind of. There's all sorts of different levels of involvement, and which I mean which are like can be age appropriate for people, at different points of their life. Dogs are there our whole lives.
And when you think about how you can be involved outside of actually stepping in the ring, I mean, look at just take Touche for example. I mean, you can't really hardly go to a dog show without seeing a dog with the name Touche on it. You've impacted the breed and everybody else around by the dogs that you've produced and seeing your dogs out there, like you said, somebody else with your kennel name with a dog. I mean, how else can you give back? Well, you produce great quality dogs that other people want, and you get to have your fingerprint on. I mean, your fingerprints all over my pedigrees, So as it is with a lot of other people's pedigrees. So there's other ways to be involved and to give to the dog community other than stepping in the show ring or breeding. And so again, be alert, be aware of what you can and can't handle, and surround yourself with people that aren't afraid to tell you, like, probably shouldn't be doing this anymore. You can't handle it, and we'll be honest with you, and that can be tough as we age, because we think we can still handle everything, but we need some people around us that can be fair, but also tell us like look, you can't do it anymore. It's like when you got to take away the driver's license from your parents because they shouldn't be driving anymore. It's like you need the people that can make the tough decisions surrounding you, and knowing and being alert that I need somebody to make those decisions for me sometimes.
Well, and having that circle of people and that awareness, as you said, then that enables you to do it longer. It enables you to stay involved. I mean, it's not giving up control because people hate to give up control. They want to control everything as like, and it's that's not that. That's really, I think that as you go along your cycle, it's like you're now. It's not so much control. It's just enjoying it on a different level. And we have to sometimes go, okay, well, maybe that's not for me now, but I can still enjoy this and I can still be part of this. And if I have friends or whatever to that point where it's like, well, maybe you should sign on and co-own a dog and be a co-owner and get to follow along at that dog show career and have that kind of thing or like I say belong to your kennel club to be part of their show once a year. I mean, there are people that like you're going to be live streaming at the national this weekend, so people who couldn't come get to see the dogs and be a part of the experience, and that's pretty awesome, really.
Yeah, that's super cool. So, yeah, there's ways to stay involved with just what you can and can't physically and mentally do. So, I think we hopefully answered that question, Marie. On to the next question. This is probably about a 10-part question. This will follow good with the national, and as Dale and I will be making videos on judging a Japanese chin this week here, so be on the lookout for that as we go forward. So Cindy wants to know, uh, how do you break down the head, nose, and jaw of a chin, and how do they change as the dog matures?
Okay, so good question. I mean, it's a biggie, but it's a good question. When you read our breed standard, that's going to go ahead and it's going to kind of spell out the areas of importance. And this is where, when you're a breeder, when you're a judge, you just walk through there and you look. I'm just looking at the dog today. I'm looking at today. I'm not looking about, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, or this dog was. We're just looking today, this little snapshot of right now. But the breeder, we look at that as potential. And so we're going to say, well, and the more dogs you have, the more breedings you do, the more puppies you've watched develop, you go, okay, I know that this is going to get wider with age. This is going to change. This will maybe get worse with age. This is going to get overdone or develop a wrinkle or fold where it shouldn't. So there's things that you watch when you break down, when you watch your dogs mature. People oftentimes will say statements like, it'll come into its head. Eh, it might get more hair, it might fill out, it might become more palatable to look at, but it is probably, like some breeds, if it a dog with a really good head, it always had a good head. I mean, if it had big eyes, that didn't happen later on. It was born with big eyes. If it had a big space, broad set eyes, it had that as a puppy too. Now, I mean, there are developmental features like jaws will fill out a little bit with maturity. The weight of the coat, it will pull the ears down and forward and maybe frame the face. As they get older, they'll get a little more uh, cushion in there, a little padding and stuff. That can change, that can enhance what's there. But in a lot of ways, what you see is what you get on different stages of its life. Kind of like those apps where it shows people, someone younger, older, super old, that kind of thing. So there, but what you want to learn are the the hallmarks for your breed at that age, and the things like what you there's certain things you can look at this age. I should be seeing this, and if I don't have this, I'm going to abandon ship, place this dog, get something else. And then you can go ahead and say, at this age, I should be seeing these qualities there. And kind of, you can kind of be watching for that development. Haven't you seen your dogs change as they've developed? I mean,
Yeah.
their
Oh,
appearance.
oh, yeah. Yeah, you see it. I mean, especially so we're talking if we're talking chin here. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that you notice with the chin with age is coat. Like their coat is they're going to be the cute little puppy. They're going to be fluffy and soft, and then they're going to hit 6 months old, but somewhere between 6 and 12 months, and they're going to be bald. It's going to feel like they lost all their cute little fluffy hair, and now you have this short haired dog, and you're like, what the heck is happening? And then you watch dog shows and other people's dogs, and you're just like, this chin is so, hair was so long. It's how old's your dog? 11 months. Yeah, they're in the ugly phase still. Like, a chin, what, 2 years old before they have a really nice, decent coat?
They'll start to bloom. They come into a
Yeah.
bloom, and it's like so. Like with like if we are going to talk about the chin, or you know, when one thing I find to be very true about dogs, all breeds that I've ever been involved with, is your eyes are your eyes. Eyes don't necessarily get bigger. They don't change a lot in their shape. I mean, there are some breeds that may be heavier dogs that where they'll get more and they'll close up a little bit with the weight of the face and stuff. But your eyes are your eyes, pretty much. And so your eyes placement and size, that's going to make it whether they're closer together or further apart. Like so for the I have found that the eye set, how far they're apart, and the size is very indicative to the size of the head. Your head is going, the head is going, if you're wanting like a chin where you want a larger skull on your dog, and this would go for Shih Tzu, Pug, whatever, then you're going to want the bigger eyes further apart. You're is going to have your larger skull. And so people say, how big they see something they'll say, well, how do I know if that's a big eye? Well, look at the nose, and if the eyes on that dog are larger than its nose, it's probably going to be a big eye. Yeah, that's going to because that's kind of in proportion to the features. That's something I look for when I want a large eye and a smaller nose. That's something that and chin that's very desirable. But you can really kind of tell proportions by looking at the size of eyes to nose. And then on like as far as like jaws and stuff like that, if they're narrow, they're always going to be a little bit narrow. But if they're, I find that the breadth of jaw is something you can see younger in dogs. I mean, you'll what will change a little bit is as that jaw develops and fills out with coat and weight and just the plushness of the around the face, it will fill up that space and kind of like the face will go more in, and it will look far less out of the face than in the face because the face is exploding around it and stuff. In Shih Tzu, they call that stage the chrysanthemum. And then as that hair, which just shoots out everywhere, starts to weight down and come down, and you can start to see the details of the face more so than just a puffball. Those are developmental things. As to what it's going to end up like. And then how important those features are for your individual breed is you read that standard, kind of see in there. Like with chin, we put tons of points on the size of the eyes, the color of the eyes, the placement of the eyes, size of the nose. And we talk about that the nose would have open nostrils because no breed is it desirable for them to have a pinch nostril where they can't have free breathing, kind of like myself today with allergies, not free breathing. Um, yeah, yeah. So I mean, those are things that you will see uh, with like one thing that's developmental with the face also is the tongue and stuff. So if your dog is cutting teeth and the tongue is poking out a little bit, that's probably not the worst thing in the whole world. The teeth will come in and it'll hold the tongue in, and as long as you can touch that tongue and they can shut it and the tongue is gone, it's probably going to be okay. But you start watching it, if that tongue goes out of the side of the mouth, then that could be a rye bite. And that's probably not going to get any better. And that actually probably will get worse. So those are just
Can
things
that
that.
be genetic, or is that not?
Say that again.
Can that be genetic? Is that a genetic thing? Like, would that
Well,
pass
I
on?
promise you that's genetic. And that's like in brachycephalic breeds, chin, pugs, French bulldogs, Pekingese, English toy spaniels, Brussels griffons. That is a terrible, terrible fault, horribly genetic. And like in Brussels griffons, it's just disqualification if the tongue is hanging out of their mouth because it is going and it's a really bad fault in any of those breeds for that tongue to go off the side. So that's what they call a rye bite. And you don't actually check for a rye bite by seeing the teeth. You look at how the mouth shuts and how the tongue lines up and that everything goes away. It all goes back where it's supposed to. It's a bad problem health wise and visually. It's not really appealing to when their tongues are hanging out of their mouths.
So, is specifically in the Japanese chin? What are you looking for in the nose and the jaw? Can you do a breakdown on nose and jaw?
Sure.
This is part of that same question. Sorry,
Yeah.
this was
So
specifically for the chin.
yeah, specifically for the chin, that breadth of the jaw, because when they say the round head, where on a lot of times a very common fault we'll see is there's more width here at the top of the head or the skull, and then it goes into a light bulb shape because the jaw is narrow. So you want to see the width, and the shorter that jaw is, the wider it's going to be, and it's going to get the more rounded look. So you're like with the chin, you're gonna turn that head sideways, and you're gonna look for. We have what we call the reverse three, and the larger part of the three is from here, and the smaller part of the three is from there. But it's going to be round this way and round this way. So it's not an oval; it's round, and you
Can
have
it
to
be
have.
too domed on the top? Is the top of the head supposed to be dome, or is it supposed to be flatter?
Okay, so like with the chin, it says don't. So when you feel from the top of the ear set, you should feel a slight rounding of the skull. Where, say, if you look at a Cavalier, a King Charles Spaniel, that head's flat across the top, and the ears sit up there. There's a big, broad, flat skull there, and or where the English toy, it's lower set ears because you know how domed the skull is. It sets us where the ears are going to set. So, like with the chin, when the ears are setting further down, the head is usually smaller. It's not got a lot of width. So when the head's wider, the ears are usually set a little higher. It kind of moves everything out.
So is a slight. How do you define slight dome? Where's the line between
That's
slight
right. So
like
so
this
you're looking at
or
the
too much of
proportion.
a dome?
You're looking at the proportion from the top to the bottom. So first you're going to look at the round, right? And that round should hit the corners of the ears and the corners of the jaw. It should like fill out the whole circle. And and so if the then the ears are going to sit at the corners, right? So that's only going to be just the rounding it takes to fill into there. If it looks like it's going down and the rounding ends at the outside, they should have. Here's the word we're looking for. They should have face beyond the eyes. So when you're looking at the round, the skull and the face should go beyond that eye. If the skull ends at the eye, then that's going to make a more narrow head and a lower set ear. and it's going to make the doming more extreme because it's not as round. Because the rounder and broader that is, it's going to minimize the amount of actual doming. So really, when you look at it, you should see, and you want to touch that because we have those markings, and we don't want to make sure that that's not hair, just white hair poking up there. Touch it to make sure it's just so slightly domed over to the top of each ear. That's where those little words like that, where the peaks are flat and broad and like envelope shaped, the chin are round, the pugs are big and round, and you can kind of see how their ears are going to sit higher up on the skull because they've got that more width.
So is it safe to say if you look at a chin and you can see a pretty big dome that you're like, okay, that's probably too big, that they have a narrow head? Is that safe to say? Is like they're probably more oblong if they have a big dome?
If you've got an oval, where it's like, yeah, there's going to be
Yeah.
more doming, and that's not going to that. And when that happens, that means the eyes closer together. That's going to mean the jaw is going to be narrower. Sometimes these matters of quality and type are kind of like falling downstairs. Like if you hit this one, then the next thing that's going to go is this and this and this and this, and you're going to be all the way to the bottom. So when you have a broad jaw on a puppy, it will have width between the eyes. And if you have the broad jaw and the width between the eyes, you will have the roundness of the skull. And if you have the roundness of the skull, the ears are going to be set where it's only going to be slightly domed. All of that is going to fall together because all of those traits are linked. It's kind of like you're building a Lego house, and you have this, which goes to this, which goes to this, and they all fit together. And so it's kind of like when you just got like this little cheat sheet. So, but one of the first things that'll show up, like on the young dogs, are the wider set eyes. The wider set eyes are not going to be close together and make them with a more oval shape. It's going to be a broader, rounder head. And so those are the things you start to look for early on in the game.
You can't make a circle with a straight line, right?
Bingo.
So now, how about the nose on a chin? You mentioned the reverse three, and I know the nose has a big part to do with that, but what else? The open nostrils. Talk just a little bit more about the nose.
So, all right. So, number one big thing with the nose and stuff, and this is when you read your standard size. So, we want that nose to be small because, like with the chin, that nose is inside the face. And that's kind of important that nose being inside the face. When you turn it to the side, what that means is you're going to have the planes of the foreskull and the jaw. The nose should set in here. The nose should not be outside of that line. If that nose comes beyond those lines of the foreskull and the underjaw, the nose is outside the face. That's too long. And so, because that broad jaw is going to make the tip up, and that nose is going to set back in. So the old story is like if you can put your finger on the nose, it's too long. And so small, set in, and open nostrils where you can see the well defined. I think that I always kind of equivalent it to being like the shape of an umbrella. You know, when you look at it, it should look pretty. It's just kind of like really like perfect, like in there stuff. Some breeds will have, which is kind of, like Boston Terriers, they'll have like a dropped nostril, which is probably kind of a link to like a cleft palate, a hair lip type thing where it's like open down there and it'll drop in there. You want that, it should be perfectly centered, it should be straight, and it should be open. You don't want the tips of it to turn down because then that's going to constrict their air. They're not going to be what we call free breathing. Because if it is not hot and they're not stressed out, they should not be panting. They should be able to breathe through their nose, unlike what I can do right now. And that's really important for the health of the dog that they can breathe. Breathing I know that sounds stupid, but they will end up with a higher percentage of heart problems. Not a good air exchange is not conducive to a long, healthy life.
Now, what about the jaw as far as overbite, underbite? I mean, that obviously can change the shape of the head and as you're looking at it. So, what do you typically, as far as chin, still chin related?
Okay, so in still chin related, or with an underbite. And so what an underbite is, you have a scissors bite is when the tops fit over this. A good chunk of the dogs have a scissors bite. A lot of the Cavalier King Charles should have a scissors bite. They'll have top teeth go over the bottom teeth. A lot of the foreign countries will call for a scissors bite. So when you have a scissors bite, that's going to fit over the top. Well, then some breeds will call for a scissors to even. That means they'll line up and they'll be like that. That's one type of look. The chin should always, always, always have an underbite, like a pug or a Shih Tzu or a Pekingese, and that bite should fit in there like that. And because that underbite also makes the width. Because if it's narrow or like that, then it's going to pout out. But it should be tight and pretty, shut like a dresser drawer, and it should be like sit in there like that, holding that all in, and it'll fill out the lips. I'll give them that. Whereas if they don't have that, if they don't have the underbite, then they don't have the upsweep, and that's not going to tip the nose back into the head. It's going to, when you think of something quilted and you have like part of it pulled in, and that the nose should sit right there in that because there should be width and fullness through that bottom jaw, which is the hardest thing to get. So whenever I look at our illustrated standard for our breed shows the underside of the head, and you can see that short, broad, rounded jaw like that, and I mean, which is hard to get and so desirable. Because sometimes I'll look and see like magazines, and I'll see pictures of really pretty markings and big pretty ears, and it all looks pretty good except this jaw is real weak, and it's like they can fill it in with hair, but that still doesn't make that perfectly round head all the way around. No sharp edges on the chin, so they shouldn't have like a little narrow chin jutting out. They should have a broad, broad underjaw.
And generally, if you see that more narrow chin, you're gonna have like space in the underbite too, right? Like, so if they're you want their teeth closer together like this, where it
They
closes really
should,
there's space, there's
they,
probably too narrow.
yep, they should. If it's got it here, then you kind of start seeing that tongue slipping out there, and you start getting that face like I don't know if you guys got that commercial, the bitter beer face, where it looks like the guy doesn't have his false teeth in, and it's like, yeah, you want that, it should fit tight and pretty and keep the tongue in. If that starts getting longer, and you got a bigger shot for rye, you're going to get more of a pout. It takes away the softness of the look.
Perfect. I think that answers that part of the question.
Is it?
And the next there's more. The next Cindy had a lot of questions, and so we appreciate
Bless
you
her heart.
listening, Cindy. Uh, Grumpy cat look. She wants to know about the grumpy cat look. Is that correct or incorrect?
Totally incorrect. Totally incorrect. So the what we're talking about with that is that weak underjaw, and that it's like that they don't have the width out there. We want the Walmart smiley face. We want the round all the way around, and then when you turn it to the side, it's round from here. It's round any way you look at it. It's round, and that face beyond the eyes, which makes it kind of wide-eyed and like, ooh, got that broad expression. I mean, you think of an owl, and you got the eye set way out there, and you got the width of the face, because every time you look at a breed, and especially you read their characteristics or their expression is really key. So, like when you read the Cavalier King Charles expression and it talks about these soft, melting expression when you look at that dog. You go, oh. And then that's the whole expression of that look. When you look at the Chow Chow, and they have their little triangular shaped eyes, and they call them the dog of the barbarian, and it's the dog of war. And I mean, it's like, and you read this and you go, okay, I got what that's supposed to look like, And a chin should be wide eyed and full of wonder and beautiful, symmetrical. It should be soft and pretty, and there should be no sharp edges, no harshness to it, and it should not appear to have a the expression should be like happy and joyful and kind of astonished looking with that like type of thing. Like you're seeing that kind of a look where it's not when you've got a narrow skull, close set eyes, narrow jaw. They may get that little kind of little shrunken Zulu head with the big ears. It doesn't make the pretty soft expression. You lose softness with that. So incorrect.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it because when you read we've talked about this before that the breed standards aren't super duper clear. They like to use terms like the expression should be energetic and happy. Like, well, what does that really mean? Well, the easiest way to say it in this scenario is it's not grumpy cat because that's grumpy looking, and we're going for happy and expressive and energetic looking.
Well, and like Grumpy Cat doesn't have round eyes. Grumpy Cat has kind of like tired eyes, like mine are today.
Yeah,
Grumpy Cat. I mean, so you can't. It kind of you lose all elements of that expression if you deviate from that. It's like you have to have this to get this to get this, and it's the whole package. That's like before the standard changed with Chin. We had a point schedule, which we don't have anymore, but we did at one time. It was like 65 points out of 100 for head, eyes, ears, and tail. So that kind of shows you like going, okay, this is really important, and how soft and pretty. All of these Asiatic breeds, because like those breeders were masters, and they would take the Hana dog, and they went pug, they went peak, they went chin, and maybe the Pekingese, the lion, more stoic, more kind of a harder look, maybe more grotesque than beautiful type of thing. The envelope, the chin, round, bright, wide-eyed. The pug is over to another thing. They all have their different interpretations of that same original where that goes, and that's what makes each breed different, and that's where the expressions are so important, and that's what makes people go crazy about them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, thanks, Cindy. Patty wants to know, as far as Japanese chin, if there is a correct or incorrect way for the like incorrect or correct way that the of the side of the body that the tail would be on. So, is it wrong if it's on the right side of the body versus the left, or is it wrong? It doesn't matter what side of the tail of the body the tail flows to.
Okay, good question, Patty. So we, of course, all the time we're in showing the dogs, we want the tail to be on the judge's side because it finishes out the shape. It makes the look, it makes from the profile standing back, you see the rounded tail, which makes the round everything out. But to answer your question, no. They can carry it on any side they want to. I mean, is it better if it's different? Well, it's easier for you, but when you're presenting your dog, if your dog wants to carry it on the other side, when you're standing in line and waiting your turn to be examined, make sure when that judge looks back down the line, you have your dog flipped around on the other side so they can see that pretty tail on that side. Just make sure that they catch it. And sometimes, because I've spent a good part of my adult life moving chin one side to the other. Um, but sometimes when the hair gets long enough on the tail, if you're lucky, when you set them on the floor after they come off the table and you give them about 2 seconds to shake, because they will, then you throw that tail onto the other side. And sometimes, if you've made them happy, they'll leave it and they'll let you do your next 2.5 minutes in the ring, and they'll carry it on that side if they want. But if they don't, that's okay too. But you can work with that too a little bit. The most important thing, like as a judge and as a breeder, I don't care. It doesn't matter what side they're on. It's any side's a good side. It's all good. Especially, I look more for the fact that they have a full length of tail that can drop down below the line of the spine. I'm more concerned that the tail is like not complete and doesn't go up, around, and down. I'd rather have a longer tail on either side than a short tail that sat on the top, like a Pomeranian. Pomeranian, the tail would go right up towards the ears, that kind of thing. Tail length is a really important thing. It's a really important thing to breed for, because it's an extension of the spine, and a good healthy tail with no kinks and stuff on it, that's a very desirable thing. Tails are important, and especially if you're wanting a show dog, I like a dog that the set is good on the tail, so that you're not because if it has a low set, it's more natural for them to put it down. And so the better the set of the tail, the longer the tail, that tail just like nailed to the back, as we say. That's a fun dog to show. I mean, because it's all the tail's always up, always looks good, always camera ready. But as far as the side of the tail, oh, we all have our druthers. We'd all like to have it on the judge's side, but if it doesn't go there, it's okay.
Yeah, and as a show, somebody, I it took me a little bit to. I have a dog that hates carrying his tail on the judge's side, carries it on the other side all the time, and it took me. It just felt so wrong when you're waiting in line to turn around and you're facing the opposite way everybody else is facing. It's like it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Yeah, on the table, you can try to stick their tail over towards the judge. My dog doesn't like it. He'll get real squirrely if I put his tail over. Doesn't stack very well. So you just don't. And you let him. I'd rather him be stacked on the table in a nice stack than make sure his tail's on the judge's side. It is what it is, and he does fine that way. But in your extensive time breeding chins, have you noticed anything genetically that carries on or passes on what side they would hold their tail, or is that just a random thing?
All right, so the length of the tail, the set of the tail, all of those are very genetic. So if you have a dog that has a shorter tail, if you have a dog that tends to let its tail go down, if you have a dog that's not flat through the hip bones and the tail's a little rounded in there, that dog's tail will go ooh, and it'll be sometimes straight up in the air and all that. It is just like blackjack as far as like which side it's going to fall. So, but I'll tell you this, dogs with longer tails and better sets produce puppies with longer tails and better sets. And if your tail is long enough to grow hair, it will stay on the side. The weight of the hair will keep it on the side you want it to. So like I say, if you breed for the set and the tail length, the rest of that will take care of itself. But I'll tell you one thing, I love me a good tail on a dog because makes it easier to show. They always look nice. It's like you cross the way. Your silhouette is always good if your tail set's good. Because a bad set tail or a shorter tail or a tail that comes down, yikes, that's kind of a deal breaker.
Yeah. That wraps up our questions. I hope that answered everybody's question that you had. We are taking questions, so if you have any questions, you can message us on Facebook on the Tack Box Podcast uh, Facebook page. You can also message us on Instagram. Those are going to be your two easiest ways to get a hold of us and put your questions in so we can answer them in another episode. We plan on doing an episode where we answer questions probably once a month if we have enough questions to fill the time, and this one took us an hour, so we got to fill this one up.
Hot damn.
Um, yeah, how about that, right? So that'll wrap up our episode for today. Be on the lookout because the next episode we plan on Dale and I will be in the national together this week. We're gonna film some videos judging a Japanese chin for the AKC, and we're going to use bits and pieces of those, and we're going to make a podcast talking about what to look for in a Japanese chin and how Dale would judge a Japanese chin. So we're going to do a podcast episode on the Japanese chin and judging it when we'll have some video that we can show you guys. So if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel where you can watch our smiling faces or our allergy filled noses, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can watch those videos when we do that. Otherwise, you're just going to be listening to us talk about a video that we're watching, but it'll still be fun. Any last comments, Dale?
Hey, looking forward to the national. Looking forward to see you. Thanks everybody for the questions, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being subscribed to us, listening to us, and hearing us out. For Dale, I am Tyson. We will talk to you guys soon. See you.
Bye.